What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. The late spring frosts are over and it looks like the nice weather is here to stay. That means it's the perfect time to get our veggies transplanted into the garden. So today I want to show you how to transplant seedlings into your garden to ensure the biggest possible harvest. Let's go! One thing that can be demoralizing for any gardener, especially a new one, is when you start your own plants, maybe your own seed or something, and it's growing fantastic, the plants are doing real well, they're healthy, you put the time, the effort in, then you take those, you go to transplant them out, and either they don't perform well or they just die or something. That's really the worst. It's such a bad feeling knowing the effort that you put into it and the time, but it doesn't have to be like that. We can avoid that. One mistake that I always see, and one that I'm actually guilty of myself, is when we get too excited to get things going. We get too ahead of ourselves, and that comes out in many different ways. The first one is when you're so excited about getting your summer veggies in, things like your tomatoes and your cucumbers, that you put them in earlier than you should. I know me, when I first started the first couple years, I just wanted to get things in the ground as soon as I possibly could. I checked the weather. I said, oh, no frost for the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'll get this stuff in. But then what happened? A late frost came. I was out there rushing around, trying to cover my plants, trying to protect them, and it just wasn't worth it. Some of them died in the end of it. So much work, so much effort, just lost. I don't do that anymore though. I learned from my mistakes. I don't plant things out super early and try to trick or beat nature. I plant things out when they're supposed to be planted. And I've found through the years that things really don't start to excel like the summer veggies. They don't do great until there's a big shift in the weather change. I think that just happened. That's why I'm getting them in. When it comes to transplanting out veggies in your particular location, your summer ones, it's going to be dependent on a few different factors. One of them is going to be what you're actually transplanting out. Another one is going to be your particular location and when your last expected frost date is. Some of you might be wondering, how do you find this out and why is it important? Your last expected frost date is important because that'll tell you when to plant out things like your cucumbers. For instance, the cucumbers, people say to plant them out 1 to 2 weeks after your last expected frost date. I don't think so. I say 3 to 4 weeks after. You want to make sure you're safe. And you just go on the Old Farmer's Almanac, that's what I do. Type in your zip code and it'll tell you exactly what zone you're in and when your last frost date is. Then you find that frost date and you count 3 weeks ahead. That's when you put your cucumbers in my opinion. Because when it comes to cucumbers, the biggest mistake people often make is planting them out too early. My last expected frost date was April 19th. We're about 4 weeks away from that now. In some of the other beds, I transplanted out some of my cucumbers yesterday, so I'm gonna put some of these in. Cucumbers like to be spaced about 6 inches apart. So what I did is I just marked a foot on this bed, and then I'll mark where I put that foot. This is a 5-foot bed. So I'll mark where every foot is, and then I'll just mark in the center of that. That'll give you my spacing, just like that. So cucumbers, they're about 98% water. So one thing we want to make sure is that they have plenty of moisture, adequate moisture, but the other thing is they hate sitting in standing water. So we want soil that retains moisture, but can also drain it relatively well. It just doesn't sit and go anaerobic. So let's get these holes dug. You want the hole dug about 1 to 2 times, this a little bit bigger than the size of what you're planting, so it has plenty of space. And then cucumbers are good to be transplanted typically when they have 2 true leaves. These are going to be your seed casings on the outside. These are your true leaves. So when you have 2 of those, you're basically good to transplant as long as your timing is right. I like to add in when I'm transplanting this mycos right here. This is a mycorrhizal inoculant for the mycorrhizal fungi. So what this is it forms a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the plants, and then they help just benefit one another. So I'm not going to get too much into it right now. I have a lot in the past. So what we want to do is take our cucumbers here. As you can see, they're looking really healthy, really nice. We're doing surgery here. We want to be very gentle. I've seen some people that are very rough with their plants. We want to be gentle because there's a lot of stress on the plant. We never want to pull it by this base here. That'll really weaken it. We don't want to do that. If you can't pop it out easily, and you've got these little plastic trays like I do, then just cut it out. That's what I'm going to do. I don't want to damage these roots at all. If they're going to new homes, this could be a super stressful situation for them, so we want to make it as easy as we can. So we're going to be very gentle, take it right out, holding the shape. You can see not root bound. That's super important. Those roots aren't all tied up and locking each other together. Then we're just going to take that and we're going to sprinkle a little bit of that mycos in, like I mentioned. The mycos forms a relationship with the roots, so we want the mycos touching the roots. We don't need a lot of it. And the soil that I have already has mycorrhizal fungi in it. This is just going to add a little bit more. So sprinkle some of the mycos, drop it down, and we'll bury the stem just a little bit, but not too much. Some plants you can bury very deep, like tomatoes. I'll show you. You can bury those stems as deep as you can. So we're just going to be gentle, but we're also going to be a little firm pushing that in because we don't want any airspace. So we've got one plant in. We're going to move down and do the same thing over and over. Then we're going to make sure we water this in when we're finished. I planted one of those so far. I have a bunch more to plant. You'll notice though the day, it's a little sunny out right now. When you're transplanting, it's best to transplant on a nice cloudy day with a little bit of rain or something, so it's not very stressful for the plants. You don't want a super hot sunny day and a transplant at like 12 o'clock because that'll just be tough on the plants with all that beaming sun and their roots not attached into the new soil. It's just not the situation you want. So I'm transplanting these out right now, a little early, but just because I wanted to make sure I give you guys some good light while I do it. But it's later in the day, it's about 4:30. So if you're going to transplant on a nice day, you want to transplant at night as the sun's starting to go down, in my opinion. This way the plants have all night to adjust to their new home. Then when the sun comes up in the morning, they'll be a little more used to it. But if you do that, you want to make sure that it's a relatively warm night. Last night I put a lot of them in. On a warm night, it was about 60 or 70 degrees. I woke up the next morning and all the plants look fantastic. They look beautiful. So avoiding this transplant shock and getting things in at the right time and doing them correctly, it really will make such a huge difference because the way things start is often typical to the way they finish. The cucumbers all look good. They're mycosed, they're watered, they're gonna be growing up this fence line. Now let me bring you to another area and show you another mistake. There's always two sides of the coin though. Yes, you can put your stuff in too early, definitely, but you can also put the stuff in too late. That brings me to my next mistake that people make all the time. I see it so commonly made, planting out root-bound plants and ones at the wrong time. These ones are root-bound. These are ones that have been, I've had growing for a long time. You can see root bound, all the roots twisted up. That's not what you want. When you have roots twisted like that and I go to plant it in the ground, it's gonna be really tough for those roots to grow down to the water. They're already twisted up, they're already tied to get up and they're already strangling themselves, essentially suffocating itself. That's not what we want. We wanna make sure we plant them out when they first get their true leaves, like I did for the cucumbers. Let me show you some brassicas right here that I planted out when they first had their true leaves at the right time, and then show you some of the root bound ones we put out. Underneath me here, these are brassicas I put out, like I mentioned, early, when they had their first true leaves at the correct time. You can see they're growing fantastic. Some nice looking cauliflower here, some purple, some nice cabbages, a few different varieties, some kale and all that. Growing real well. These ones I planted at the same time, but I just didn't transplant them out. Now let me show you some of the ones behind me. I had to transplant them out when they were root bound because a groundhog came in and ate a lot of my stuff. So I wanted to try to replace it. Let me show you what those look like. Only about 10 feet from where I just was. Those brassicas, they're doing fantastic. You come down here. This one, I planted a root bound brassica, I guess about a week or so ago. Since I put it in, it's just basically sat there. Not much has happened. That's not a good sign. That's not what I like to see. And I don't think it's gonna even finish in time. So I'm probably gonna remove this plant. Again, the only reason I planted it was just to replace one that a groundhog ate. So I'll have to take it out and put a summer veggie in, but this is what happens when you put root bound plants in. So sometimes you think you may have done something wrong where you didn't add enough fertilizer or your soil wasn't good enough. Sometimes you just have unhealthy root bound plants and it's tough to heal root bound plants, especially when they're annuals. Before I move on, I wanted to share with you what I believe is the ultimate gardening tool, probably the most valuable gardening tool that I have. I think it's the reason that my tomatoes are going to do so well, the reason why I think my cucumbers were planted at the right time. And that tool is a garden journal. I know it doesn't sound like anything crazy, but it can be huge for you. Think about it like this. Imagine you were gardening for the last 7, 8, or say 9 years. You've been gardening for the last 9 years. Imagine you journaled everything, you wrote it down, all your experiences. You could take those 7, 8, 9 years of experience, knowledge, all that, and invest it in your 10th year. Imagine that. All that history, because we know that history can oftentimes repeat itself. So we'll take the past and invest it into the future. I think that's huge. And I wanted to say, I know there are some of you who haven't decided yet. You're undecided about whether or not you want to start your garden, build your raised bed. I'm here to tell you, make that decision. A lot of times, deciding is harder than even going through with a decision that we did make. Let me explain it. You want to build a raised bed. Deciding to do that, sometimes it's harder than actually getting out there and building it. Once you get going, once you get moving, that motivation drives you. It's like a domino effect. You build that raised bed, next thing you know, you're getting a tree in. Next thing you know, you've got a backyard fruit forest. So get it started. Now is the time. It's never too late. And just think about it. It's like the most incredible thing to me. The power of a decision, knowing that any day you can choose, any day you can decide today's the day I'm starting to grow. Another mistake that I see made all the time, especially by new gardeners, and can easily be avoided, is when people don't harden their plants off properly. So what we're doing is when we're hardening plants is essentially we're getting them used to the environment that they will be in the future. For me, hardening off, it's not that much of a process because as you can see, when I have nice days, I take all my trays, I take them out of the greenhouse and I bring them outside. It's a lot of work every day bringing them in and out, but I don't care. I love gardening, so any of the work for me, it's almost like a form of enjoyment. But I like when my plants are big, I like when they're healthy, I like when they're acclimated to the particular conditions. If you're not like me, if you start your seeds indoors, then just think about that. Put yourself in the roots of the plant. Imagine just being inside, like your whole life naked inside, and then all of a sudden one day someone takes you, they throw you outside naked in the cold. You know, that's a tough adjustment. That's not what we want to do. We want to gradually harden these plants off, get them used to the environment that they're going to go into. So I believe hardening off usually could take a process of about 2 weeks when you're going from inside to outside. You want to do it gradually, slowly. Maybe the first week, just bring the plants out for an hour or two in the shade, then bring them inside. This hardening off process is so huge. It's so important because you could spend all the time, like for the other things, putting all the effort in, having your plants look beautiful, then you don't harden them off, you throw them out, and they go backwards 5 steps. You gotta wait for them to come back. That's not what we want. We want to avoid these issues. We want to make sure doing things right the first time. So let's sum it up and break it down into 4 parts. The first one has to do with timing. You want to make sure you're not transplanting out too late or also too early. In this case, let your journal guide you. It will be a huge help. The second one has to do with hardening off. We want to make sure we're taking the time to harden these plants off. Again, they're going to be going from one environment to a new one. Be gentle with them. The third one has to do with root-bound plants. We want to make sure we have healthy plants that are not root-bound, the ones we're putting in. We don't want to waste any of that time. And the fourth one has to do with soil health and soil structure. We need soil that is adequate nutrition, but also drains well and can retain moisture. What, did you think Tuck wasn't going to make an appearance in this video? It's his channel. This guy's a leader. Of course he's going to be in it. But he's having a nice relaxed day today. It's like 85 degrees, so it was warm. He's finding his own shade, digging his own hole, staying nice and cool. He's a smart guy. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's just so relaxed right now, enjoying himself, and it was a beautiful day. Right now is a good time to do the transplanting because the sun's going down and it's cooling off. This guy is he's had a fun time. We were running around playing with the sticks for a while, playing with the ball, so I think we tired him out a little bit. It's funny, I think Tuck might enjoy being outside more than me. I don't know though. He likes getting his nose dirty just as much as I like getting my hands dirty. I think I'm the better digger, but he's a little more persistent than me, so he loves digging his holes under here, cooling himself off. One thing I wanted to mention before the video was over though. When you get plants from Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff, I don't buy almost anything from there besides some of the herbs, but one thing you need to take into account, these plants, the tomatoes, the peppers, they're drug addicts. These things have been fed Miracle Grow since the time that they were born. So they're super drug addict plants. If you take this plant and you just stick it into soil that doesn't have a lot of nutrition, that isn't highly fertilized, it's gonna probably die. It's not going to do well. So it probably happened to you in the past when you had plants from Home Depot, Lowe's, some of those big box stores. They looked great. You put them in the garden and then they never did anything. That's because they're drug addicts. So you got to make sure you're fertilizing them when you put them into a garden. You can do something natural, compost tea, but they just have to kind of have that time when they could detox a little bit and get used to the new soil. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you take some of this information that me and Tuck shared, that you use some of it and it brings you a lot of value, that it increases your harvest. That's our goal. I wanted to mention, a number of you have been sending me pictures about some raised beds you're building, some food forest you put in. Me and Tuck just want to say thank you. Like, that means more to us than anything. All we want is people to move to action and to make decisions to start getting the gardens in. We want to make sure everyone's growing and inspiring other people to grow. It doesn't matter if you have a little balcony. It's not about you just starting a garden. It's about you starting a garden and encouraging another person, and that whole domino effect. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share with your friends. Don't forget to check out the merch down low. Don't forget to use our Amazon affiliate link too, anytime you're shopping. Again, the link's gonna be in the description. You don't have to buy what's on the link. Just anytime you're shopping on Amazon, use our link. It'll give us just a little piece of it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Tuck and James, we